Yar. Yar. What did the pirate say when he turned 80?
Yar,
Yar, I'm
matey.
80.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was close.
So, yeah, how you feeling? You had your poop deck swabbed recently?
Um, no, haven't actually.
No, you haven't.
Um, maybe we should get that checked. I'm good.
You haven't let me see your bottlenose dolphin for a while either. Let me run my finger around your blowhole.
Unfortunately not. But I don't think people need to know that. I'm good. I'm in the era of drinking the champagne. So I don't know whether this is like a global thing, but when people gift you champagne, you seem to keep it for like 20 years. Well, till you pop your clogs. And then I've realised actually champagne doesn't age well. You're meant to actually drink it. So I've started just drinking it even on a Monday.
So what she's really saying is she's drinking every night and she's in complete denial about having a drinking problem. That's what's happening in our household at
Shut
the
up.
moment. Yeah, complete denial.
It's maybe once a week.
Yeah, whatever.
Champagne drinking.
Complete denial. Live, laugh, live a failure. That's how you're going.
How are you?
Yeah, not bad, thank you. Not bad.
Tell that to your face.
Fuck off. What's going on? Someone called me the king of side quests the other day, and it's really played on my mind because it made me laugh. But
I feel like they've got the problem.
yeah. So I've got a couple of meetings with agents about being represented for like future books. My book is now out on Audible, and I don't know how Americans will take to it because it's sold like it's been selling, it's fine. But the lady who did the audio is American, and I didn't have time to like teach her Northeast accents. So anybody from England will probably find the accents fucking hilarious because it's done by what an American thinks Northeast accents are. But it's my first book, first audio book. It's one of those things. I'm taking it as a learning experience. Balls deep into my second book, and I've also landed a paying gig for comedy, which is my first paying gig.
Amazing.
So yeah, on the 7th of September, I'll be performing in a town called Redcar, which is on the northeast coast of England, and I'll be doing two 30-minute sets, which is an hour of material, which is going to be fucking difficult for a new comedian to do that. So yeah, I mean, just other than that, I got promoted at work. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got promoted at work. I've moved on in seniority, so things are going good. It's that, and I imagine other people are like this. It's that bullshit thing with like corporate like businesses where you've been promoted, you and your manager are talking about it, like you're doing your new stuff, but because the paperwork hasn't went through fully, like you can't officially announce it to anyone, even though like all the details are being ironed out. And then I had my discussion today about my bonus, and the way the bonus works for us is our manager gets given a set percentage that he has to distribute between the team. So then we were discussing today, and he said like, well, you can make a very good case that because like for what I do, right, I am kind of based on how much I can deliver. It's not a sales job. It's very much a technology job, but I'm very good at getting things done.
Yeah.
As you can imagine, my type of personality, I'm like, right, let's just fucking get this done. So he said there is a case to be made that you'd get the top bonus, which is like 10% of my new salary, but that would mean points being taken away from other people.
You were like, fucking do
Well,
it.
no, yeah,
No, you're nice, so
part
you
part of
wouldn't
it, I
say
was like,
that.
"Fuck 'em," but then I was like, because yeah, so, but there's also people who report to me who are in this
Who
pool as
would
well.
say that?
No, there's people who report to me who are in this pool,
Yeah.
and that, like, their bonus was so I've essentially said, "Right, let's split the difference. Give me higher than average, but make sure there's still enough to pass around for other
Oh.
people." But I did say, even as a token, like, I want higher than average because
Yeah.
I am
I mean,
above average.
yes. And I think as well, you can't help it if someone on your team's had their first child recently. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You
So
know,
there's
that's a real heartstring tugger.
there is a couple. There is a couple. No, that does factor into it. Yeah,
It does, though.
yeah. So anyway, what I'm trying to get across here is normalize talking about money, normalize
Definitely.
talking about this stuff because the only people who benefit are the people who pay you. If you don't talk about your money with other people you work with,
You're getting
then
out.
yeah, well, yeah, you don't get anything. But anyway, speaking of money, otherwise known as pieces of eight, we're going to talk about pirates today. Although it's a slight misleading one. We are going to talk about the Corsairs of Umbar. However, we are going to talk about the region of Umbar and the origin of the word Corsair
Oh God.
first.
I was just about to say, don't
No,
you dare say philology.
not just the etymologies of it. We're actually going to talk about like what Corsairs are, because there's a reason Tolkien didn't call them the Pirates of Umbar. But we're also going to talk about Umbar as a region, and the Corsairs don't come into it until about 1500 years into its existence. So there is particular events that lead to what become known as the Corsairs of Umbar of the Third Age, but Umbar itself is a contentious place within Gondor. Okay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I will try and think of as many pirate jokes and as many puns as I can, hope with the aim that after this you will climb up my crow's nest and slide down my rigging. Or I can
Are you talking to me or are you talking to
I'm
everyone?
talking to you. I want to flip you over and peel the barnacles off your hull, off your bottom.
Dirty.
Yeah. It's just little dry bits of shit that you can't get.
Oh, stop.
Right, so what is a corsair? Do you know what a corsair is?
It's a coarse hair. It sounds a bit like a almost like a nobility in a sense. So like a family of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but no, it's wrong. It is a pirate or a privateer, which is another word for
I know
pirate.
what they actually were.
Oh, well, it's almost like I've wrote this in a way that I'm going to examine the subject, so I need to have sentences that run onto it. It's funny that, isn't it? As I was saying, so corsair is a word for pirate or privateer, right? The word corsair, however, relates particularly to the French corsairs, and it's where we get the name from, as the original corsairs were agents who acted on behalf of the French crown, and they were considered combatants, as in they weren't part of the military, but they were like combatants in a war. And this was all provided that they held their lettre de marque or lettre de course. And course here means expedition or journey. So your lettre de course is where we get the word corsair from. So corsair comes from French course, which means an expedition or journey. So your letter of expedition,
Okay.
that you are authorized by the crown to be out here. And
So
what they
you're like your police badge to go in
exactly,
the
yes,
house.
it was like it was a royal writ, right? But any corsairs who attacked their own country's ships or those of a neutral country were theoretically treated as pirates and hanged by their own country. So a pirate is beholden to nobody. A
Yeah.
corsair, theoretically,
It's beholden to someone.
belongs to a nation,
Okay.
and that they should also obey maritime law. Like that is the French Admiralty's maritime law. And what they were,
That's why I'm drinking champagne.
yeah, exactly. What their activities were is they were authorized by the French crown to carry out raids on foreign ships when these countries were at war with France. And the ships and cargo were sold at auction, and the corsair captain was given a share of the proceeds, which then would filter down to the crew. Allegedly, corsairs were ordered to conduct themselves in accordance with maritime or admiralty law, but the word itself, and this is where we get into the philology, the word itself derives from the Italian corsaro, which comes from the Latin cursus. All of these mean journey or expedition. And there's also speculation that the term could possibly be a mispronunciation of the Arabic word kursan, Qursan, but there was a particular Islamic scholar who actually said it was the other way around, and that kursan or karsan may be an Arabicized form of the word corsair. And it goes without saying that other countries viewed them as pirates. Corsair, they were only viewed as corsairs by their own country. So there was other corsairs and like Turkish Corsairs as well. Like, I think,
Sounds like very loopholey.
well, it's kind of, it was pretty much like, it was like renegades that were, but they acted on behalf of the crown. But I think the British had privateers as well. Privateer. Basically it's one man's Corsairs, another man's pirate. One man's
Yeah.
privateers,
Yeah,
another
because
man's pirate.
'cause they're in the interest of the country
Yeah,
and not
exactly,
your country.
exactly.
Yeah,
And if they were caught by another country, they'd be hanged.
yeah.
So now we know what a Corsair is. Unfortunately, I didn't go too deep into the history of piracy because I find it absolutely fucking fascinating. They had gay marriage, they had life insurance,
Mhm.
they had bedtimes by 8 o'clock. At a
It
certain point,
sounds
the
perfect.
golden age of piracy was only about 50 years or so.
Why?
It was a
Why not
very, yeah, it
longer?
was a very short time period. It was much better to be a pirate at a certain point than to be in any of the navies. So that is why I've held myself off from going
Yeah,
any more into it, because I love
piracy.
pirate history. I think it's absolutely fascinating.
He just loves piracy. That's all it is.
Yes.
You would make a great pirate.
Well, piracy is digital piracy is increased 38% over the last couple of years because of the absolute bullshit that we've got with streaming and
S
not owning anything, all the fucking streaming services. So yeah, piracy's up. So yeah, next step, get a boat. I have wanted a boat for a while.
You're not getting a boat. However, I am
Try and
enjoying
stop me.
swimming in the sea.
Yeah, try and stop me.
I
Becca's
wanna
been
go
swim.
every
Yeah, you've been
night.
swimming in the sea quite a lot. It's been pretty. Oh, we all went swimming in the sea the other day.
We
Actually,
did.
all of us. Yeah.
Well, our child kind of just bobbed.
Yeah, she bobbed. Yeah, yeah. Anyway, right. So now we know what a corsair is. What is Umbar? And Umbar, what do you know anything about Umbar before we begin, Bar?
No,
All right then.
no bar.
So Umbar was a realm or country on the coast of Middle Earth that was south of Gondor. Now, if you have a map of Middle Earth handy, I want you to
Oh,
find.
what? Wait a second.
Fuck off. I want you to find the Bay of Belfalas, which is in the bottom left-hand corner of most of the maps, like near the sea. Obviously, it's coast. Duh. Find the Bay of Belfalas. Just below that, you'll see a bit where the land juts out and then goes back in again. That's Umbar. And it was the name of the country, but it was also the name of the city, the main city, which was sometimes called like the Corsairs city or whatever. But Umbar was the place and the city. It was a great fortified city, and it was made fortified by the Gondorians at a certain point in history. So I personally like to think of it as kind of like just a big massive Tortuga from Pirates of the Caribbean, because I just love that.
I'm thinking of Black Flag. Is it Black Flag or Black Sails? The TV program.
Oh, right, yeah, yeah. I don't know which one it is, but I know which one you mean. But yeah. So basically, think of any pirate haven, and it's an entire city of that, right? It's on the sea, in a bay. Well, it's in a bay that is incredibly defensible. The entrance by the sea was through a small channel formed by the coastline, so this made it an ideal haven, and it was very defensible. And inside the protected channel, there was a lot of space for ships. So if you wanted to attack Umbar successfully, you had to do it by sea and land. And we'll see that people have failed by only doing one or the other. They didn't have kings. The closest thing we get is lords of Umbar as their leaders. And there's no records of who ruled Umbar before the Númenóreans came in the Second Age. We do know that their main spoken tongue was Westron, which was the common language of Middle-earth. But the word Umbar is not of any known language in Middle-earth. I will say as well, because there was a lot of Númenóreans there will have been a lot of Adunaic spoken, which is the language of Númenor. However, there is a word in Quenya, the Elvish language, called Umbar, and that means fate. But Tolkien was very clear that this were not the same things. That Umbar, the place, was different to the Quenya word Umbar. It was called Umbar before the Númenóreans got there, and they kept the name. So it's a case of a language we have no knowledge about whatsoever. It comes from a lost language in Middle Earth, which is pretty cool. Umbar started life as an unassuming bay and springs into the stories of Middle-earth during the Second Age, when the Númenóreans began to use it as a landing point when they'd come to visit the locals. So if you remember, Númenor in general had a period of time where they were like the benevolent visitors from over the sea. They'd come and they'd teach, they'd bring gifts, and then they had a period of time where they were the tyrants and they would rule and they would rob. So yeah, yeah. There's some speculation that the Númenorian prince Aldarion, who I've mentioned on other episodes, he is a contender for one of the worst dads in Middle Earth, in my opinion. He might have been the one to discover it because he was always out voyaging. And it's because there's an event where he nearly shipwrecks near Umbar when he was down voyaging near Harad. So this puts the discovery of Umbar between the Second Age, 829, and the Second Age, 843, which was the length of this voyage. And remember, the Second Age of Middle-earth is about 3,400 years.
Very late in the history.
No, well, no. So 829 of the Second Age, between 829 and 843. Then if you think the battle of the War of the Last Alliance isn't about till the year 3400 or so, then you've got another 3,000 years of the Third Age before you get to Lord of the Rings.
So
So there's like
that's still a lot of.
nearly 6,000 years. It was discovered nearly 6,000
Still
years.
though, how many years before that was it just like undiscovered, or at least not written about?
We don't know because we don't know who lived there beforehand. The Númenóreans just kind of rock up and they're like, "Oh, this is ours now," and then it gets even, it's worse than that. But it is said later that Sauron chose to settle in Mordor because it was so far inland that it was a counter to the Númenóreans landing and wrecking shit. So Umbar would have played a part in that. Like Sauron would have seen Umbar, thought, "Ooh,
I'm gonna keep away from that.
because the Númenóreans will land there, and if I settle near there, they'll wreck my shit
Yeah.
from the sea." But this was pretty decent foresight though, because it didn't end up mattering ultimately for Sauron, because this Umbar was where Ar-Pharazôn landed and then marched for 7 days through Middle-earth to get to the gates of Mordor, where Sauron surrendered to him and went back to Númenor as a hostage. So Sauron retreated from any of his holdings near the coasts of Middle-earth after the War of the Elves and Sauron in around the year 1700 of the Second Age, which we covered before. But the point being, right, the Númenóreans established themselves so well along the western coast of Middle-earth that it did make Umbar at the time, and it continued to be throughout the rest of the history of Middle-earth, an incredibly strategic place to have and to hold, because it essentially became the gate to the south and the west,
Yeah.
especially for Gondor. But Umbar really kicks off when the Númenóreans turn from good guys to shitters. This is when. So, do you remember the Númenóreans? Did you remember me telling you about the Númenóreans and how they split into two factions? There's the ones who are still loyal to the Valar and the elves, and the ones who support Sauron and shun, and they, blah blah blah,
So
right?
they get leached with the badness,
Yeah.
and they're the ones who turn everything on its head.
Yes. So it kicks off when these Númenóreans start coming back to Middle-earth to dominate and to rule, and these are known as the King's Men. So there's two factions of Númenóreans before the end. There was the Faithful, which was Elendil and Anarion and Isildur. They all became like the founders of Gondor and Arnor. Then there's the King's Men, who rebelled against the Valar and stuff like that.
And they were in Umbar area.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. So it was the King's Men who disliked the Valar and the elves and the Faith, who they
They were like, fuck off, get your own areas.
they dominated Umbar.
Okay.
And the reason I mention this is because they ruled Umbar with like an iron fist, right? And during the reigns of two of the kings of Númenor, they were called Tar Kiryatan and Tar Atanamir. They were two very greedy kings. They were the 12th and the 13th kings of Númenor. But what they would do is they would send their troops and they would send their sailors to Middle-earth for tribute, right? They would demand tribute from Middle-earth. So what this made was Umbar became it was very likely that Umbar was a central place where all of this wealth would pass through on its way to being shipped back over to Numenor for these two very greedy kings. So Umbar becomes an ideal shipping point. So, very you can see very
It's
important.
Hamburg.
Oh, the Hanseatic port city of
Yeah.
Hamburg.
No taxes.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah, if they were all
Well, it
being
wouldn't
taxed.
be any taxes, would it? Because 'Cause you'd be going into your own port to have a break before you go on in.
Yeah, true. Yeah, yeah. So the Umbar was such a powerful place that even when Sauron, this is during the Second Age still, that even when Sauron was attacking other cities on the coasts, and he was publicly stating he wanted to drive the Númenóreans out of Middle Earth, he never had the strength to conquer Umbar. Sauron couldn't do it. Even though he was attacking everywhere else up and down the coast, he couldn't do it. So when Ar-Pharazôn led his massive fleet to subdue Sauron, they came over from Numenor, they landed at Umbar, and they marched 7 days through Middle-earth to get to the gates of Mordor, right? And it's important part here to note is that forever after, the people who hated, the people of Umbar forever after remembered with pride that this was the place that the Númenóreans landed when they humiliated Sauron.
Mm.
And that was, that was like, they raise a monument later to it, and I'll talk about it.
But at that point, Sauron was a good guy.
No,
He was a bad guy.
twat the
Okay,
entire time.
right,
He
good.
After the year 1700 is when he's completely out of the closet for being a wanker.
Right, okay.
So he never tries again.
So that's not just them being rebels.
No,
He is a force of evil.
it's because he was calling himself king of the world and stuff, and
Right.
it really fucked our Farazon off.
Yeah.
But that was all like that's when he goes back to
That will
Numenor.
fuck off everyone,
Well, he
though.
goes back to Numenor and then ends up destroying it from the inside, right?
Okay.
So even when Numenor fell, like when the island was destroyed, Umbar remained in the hands of the Númenóreans who had settled there permanently because they weren't on Numenor when it was flooded and when it went into the ocean. So in that sense, it's really, really similar. It's a complete parallel to Gondor and Arnor in that way. Like this is where the surviving Numenor upshot. Except it wasn't settled by the remnants of the faithful, it was settled by the remnants of the king's men. And this is around the time that ever after they become known as the Black Númenóreans. And they held on to the hatred of the faithful and like Elendil and his men and so of Gondor and Arnor. So for hundreds and then thousands of years, you've got the Black Númenóreans who are bitter about their enmity with the faithful. From the very beginning, Gondor and Arnor had enemies to the south. There was two named Black Númenórean lords. They were called Herimor and Fuino, who may have been from Umbar or nearby. They rose to power at the end of the Second Age, and they joined Sauron in the War of the Last Alliance, along with many other Black Númenóreans. And so during this war, obviously Sauron was defeated, and a lot of his forces were killed, but not all of them. And a lot of Black Númenóreans were able to flee back to Umbar and other places. And that meant that they were able to remember and to hate Gondor for many years.
What makes him black?
Melanin, I think. No, black just means evil.
Okay.
Just bad Númenóreans.
Just I was wanting to, like, clarify.
Yeah, it's just like Tolkien. It's called like it's the same. It's the
It's
same as like
black as
black
in the
magic.
colour and as in the darkness.
Yeah, they weren't brown skinned or anything,
Okay.
as far as I could tell. And the men of Harad were, I think, because I think they're based like loosely on like African societies. No, no, there's nothing there's nothing like super black about them. There's no references to basketball or rap music or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's just the archaic term of black. So for anyone who wonders, there were other settlements of Númenóreans that were further south on the coast past Umbar, but Tolkien leaves a really cryptic note about them. He just says they were absorbed. That's all he says. So there's either like a giant like
Not as
pile of
Atari.
like a giant pile of like ooze that's just moving around the world and absorbing cities.
What's that Doctor Who character? It's not it begins with an S, and it was the guy who played it's Peter Kay,
Yeah, I like
and
that.
he absorbs
Yeah, I
Yeah.
like that one. I don't know. But no, Tolkien just said that they were absorbed and nobody tried to involve them in wars, and there's not much else to be said about that. So it could be that perhaps there were elements, there were like cities of ruled by Black Numenorians who were just isolated, either politically, where they said, we want no part of this, I want to just rule over my sex kingdom, or geographically, they were isolated. There was like, I want to rule over my sex kingdom in the mountains. And that's kind of why they kept out of everything. It's like, no, I can't spare any of my big titty women for your wars. I've got other things to do. More important things. There's research they need to do. Yeah, I don't know.
I
Yeah,
bet that's what they say. My lord. Well, they only had lords, didn't they? So
yeah,
wouldn't be old
true.
my king.
No, it wouldn't be king. Yeah, yeah, fair enough. Right. Anyway, moving on. So that's the end of the second age. There's the War of the Last Alliance. Everything goes quiet for a bit,
Nice.
and it's really interesting that Umbar just kind of exists. And the next time Tolkien writes about it is the year 933 of the Third Age, when seemingly out of nowhere, King Eärnil the First of Gondor builds a navy and lays siege to them. So it's just like woke up this morning, got myself a gun. Like it's just
Yeah.
he just wakes up and he's like, I choose violence today. But no, there's a little bit more to it than that, right? So Eärnil builds a navy and lays siege to Umbar by land and sea. But we'll put the pin in it there a second and we'll go back. Eärnil was the nephew of a king called Taranon Falastor, and he was married to the famous Queen Beruthiel of Gondor. Can you remember us talking about her, the one with the cats?
Oh, yeah.
So this king,
Crazy cat lady.
yes, exactly. So we've covered this story elsewhere on the podcast. I can't
That
remember.
was ages
Yeah, I
ago.
think it might have been one of our first episodes where I
Was that
told
not
you.
like during Halloween time or something
I
ridiculous?
think it might have been when we were watching the actual Lord of the Rings films, like our first few episodes. But Queen Beruth, I'll cover it in brief here because when I do the history of Gondor, she'll get a full like going over.
Oh,
But she was a bastard, right? And so Beruthiel and Taranon Falastur were childless. That's why Eärnil took over as his nephew, right? But the important thing is that Beruthiel was a black Numenorian and she hated the sea. So, one, it's the only recorded crossover between black Numenorians and like the people of Gondor and Arnor.
hmm.
And she lived up to it. Well, she lived up to her reputation because she was an absolute bastard. She's the one, she tortured cats and kept them and they spied on people for her.
Yeah.
And she lived in Osgiliath because she hated the sound and the smell of the sea, which for a Numenorian's a bit weird, but hey ho. But this does point to the fact that as a black Numenorian, she most likely was from another settlement further inland than Umbar. If she hated the sea that much, that means she's probably never grew up around it
Mm.
too much. But this king, Taranon Falastor, he wanted to push he wanted to push Gondor's borders, and it's speculated that he married Beruthiel as a diplomatic way to expand Gondor's borders by trying to bridge that gap with a
Yeah.
marriage. But it, might not have worked that bad. Her story is quite interesting, but now it's not really the time for it, right? Short story, she's a twat, she spies on everyone, she uses the cats that she abuses. Eventually, the king gets sick of her and sends her away on a ship. She is last seen under the light of a full moon, sailing past Umbar on a ship that looks like it's being crewed by her cats. So the cats sailed her away somewhere. That is how the actual story goes, right? But
That
Taranon,
sounds like Celia's heaven.
yeah, well, yeah, true. Taranon is known as an expansionist of Gondor, and in Quenya, Taranon possibly means King of the Great Gate, and Falastor in Quenya means Lord of the Coasts. So Eärnil, who lays siege to Umbar, the reason I told you about the king before him is that a possible motive for him to attack Umbar is to try and expand the borders further, to
Yeah,
try and carry on
get
the
that.
work of his uncle, the last king, the previous king, right?
Get that coastline.
Yeah, so he wants to continue the work his uncle starts, and he decides it's time to take Umbar. He starts by repairing Pelagia, and Pelagia, for anyone who's listening and being like, "Oh, that sounds a bit familiar," Pelagia is mentioned in the books and in the films, but it's always kind of assumed that you'd know where it was, but it's Gondor's main harbor city. So Umbar is the harbor city of the Black Númenóreans. Pelagia is the main harbor city for the Gondorians. That's where most of
Oh,
their
so
ships
he's
are.
trying to get all the coastline.
No, he
The
just
bit
repairs it. It'd fallen into disuse.
right,
So
okay.
he repairs the city and then builds a massive navy, right?
Yeah.
And that's what he does. So it's from here, from Pelagia, that Earnil launches his siege, and he's successful, but it costs him a lot. And the reason it costs him a lot is one, it's a siege, so he has to fight really hard. So he has to fight from the sea and the land. But the Black Númenóreans and the inhabitants of Umbar fight bitterly. They are motivated by hatred, and plus, they're being attacked. But they defend Umbar with a vengeance because of that ancient, enmity. But Earnil is successful, even though it costs him a lot. And the Black Númenórean lords are forced to flee from Umbar. So they just say, fuck this, house. And then 3 years later, Earnil dies in a storm off the coast of Umbar.
And
And
then they all come running back.
yes, many men and ships are lost with him. Gutted, right? Earnil is a shortened version of Eärendil in Quenya. And obviously Eärendil is the star in the sky. And it means devoted to the sea or sea lover, or an ancient third term is fish fucker.
Sounds like you. Perfect name if you were in Lord of
That's
the
not a
Rings.
nice way to call you to talk about your
I
own
mean,
vagina.
the way that you looked standing in the sea on Sunday,
I'm a gay fish.
where you just stood staring as if you were like some sort of
You called me a sea pedo.
well, that's what you looked like. You weren't
What
moving.
a thing to shout on the
I was
beach.
trying to get my wetsuit on, and you were just staring like a paedophile.
I was getting used to the frigging water. It was
Yeah,
freezing.
but you didn't
I had
move an inch. You
yes,
looked like a serial
no,
killer
it's
paedophile.
because I had waves lapping gently over my bollocks, and they were ice cold at the time. I still wasn't used to the water, so my nuts. The thing was, right?
You look like a weirdo.
No, the thing was, I was stood at this exact height that the water would hit my nuts and they'd shrivel a little bit and rise above the water. Then they'd lower back down after they felt warm enough, only to get hit again. So my bollocks were just yo-yoing. That's why I was stood there, because
What? Because all your brain power went to your nuts.
yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
I was trying to manually contract them. I was trying to manually bring them inside, and it didn't work. But my nuts were playing yo-yo, and not a shred of sympathy for me.
No, because while I was trying to get a wetsuit on, watch the dog and the child, you were standing like a pedo in the sea.
Stop saying pedo. Oh my god, you're ridiculous.
That was you.
You can't be
So
saying
you
things like
sound
that.
exactly like that person.
No, shut the fuck up. You're a fish fucker.
A fish fucker. A happy
Aearn
fisherman.
Earnil's son is called Kiryandil, and he continues to build ships like his dad. And it's during his reign that the Black Númenóreans who fled become powerful with the men of Harad. So they flee west. So if you imagine you've got like Gondor on the coast, and then on the coast, you go down, straight down south. You've got Minas Tirith over here. Then you go left to the sea, down to Umbar. Then you turn right, and that's Harad, right? It's that way.
So they joined forces.
So yeah, they fled east and went into Harad, right? That is the nation east of Umbar and south of Gondor, and they attack Umbar with a large force in the year 1015 of the Third Age, so about 70 years later, 80 years later. King Kiryandil is killed in this siege, but the Black Númenóreans are still not successful. That's how important Umbar is, because even though they were laid siege to by a bigger force by land, Gondor just keeps resupplying men, ships, and food by sea. And Kiryandil probably means ship lover in Quenya. Shut up. So the siege is still going on, even though the king's dead, right? The siege is still going on, and Cyr Yandil's son takes the throne, and he's called Kirjahe, which means shiplord in Quenya. And he also takes another name, which is Hjarmendasil, which means South Victor, because, spoiler alert, he builds a big old army and navy and defeats the Haradrim attacking Umbar. And it's probably no coincidence that he starts strong. That's his big victory, right? Kirya here is the king during whose reign Gondor reaches its zenith, as in the highest height of its power and its territory. So it's during this guy's reign that Gondor is as big and as powerful as it will ever be, and it is all downhill from here, just like women turning 30. Just messing. So he defeats the Haradrim in the year 1050 of the Third Age, which means the siege continues for a long time. It's like 35 years after the previous king is killed is when the siege ends. And the result of this is that the kings of Harad had to acknowledge the overlordship of Gondor, and as a token of peace, the sons of the kings of Harad live as hostages in the courts of Gondor, which I understand that used to be quite a common thing for like royalty to just like exchange hostages during times of wars, like
Yeah.
it's a way to ensure
Like,
peace, right?
you keep this person,
Yeah, like it was the princes, yeah,
and
yeah,
then we're
exactly.
still tied together, but
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
more
yeah,
genteel way.
yeah. So when they did capture Umbar originally, the Gondorians built a huge pillar high on the hill that nearby, right? And they built it as a monument to Sauron submitting to Ar-Pharazôn. And it's said that this pillar was giant and white and had a globe of crystal that shone so bright in the sun and the moon that it could be seen from miles away. And this
Can you purchase one of them from IKEA?
it's probably one of those like big paper standing lamps we all had growing up in
Yeah,
the UK. Every house in the UK in the early 2000s had that lamp from IKEA at some point, the one where you'd have to stand on the switch.
yeah.
We all had them, and then we all replaced them with twigs with fairy lights on them for a few years, and then we kind of went our own way after that. But
Yeah.
those were the two unifying last two times that British people were unified was those two light sources. Oh, that and the black and silver TV stand that everybody in Britain
Oh,
seems to
the
have.
glass TV stand.
The black
You
and
cannot
silver.
even give them away.
You can't because everyone had one.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's like how like the government gave out Anderson shelters during World War II.
Yeah.
That at some point the Tony Blair government gave out the same TV stand to everyone. You're gonna need to watch this. um. So yeah, but so this big lighthouse, right? Essentially, that's where it kind of was. This monument acted as a lighthouse. It got my little brain tickling, and I was like, I've heard of something similar in Tolkien, and it was to do with the Noldor. And at first, I thought of the lamps before the trees from Valar, and I was like, no, there's another one. And I went back to the Silmarillion, and I remembered the Mindon Eldalieva, which it's the giant tower that the Noldor elves look back and see as they're exiled from Valinor. And it was the tallest tower in the city of Tirion upon the hill of Tuna, and it had a silver lamp that radiated far into the mists of the sea. So it's that thing about with Tolkien where it's like little references all down the years. Like, they built a giant lighthouse that was an echo of the lighthouse. And just like how the white tree is a cutting from the tree of Numenor, which was a copy of a tree from Valinor. It's like, I know we don't do allegory, and I know we don't talk too much about it, but it seems very on the nose, kind of like Plato's cave type of stuff. Like everything's a copy of a copy.
Yeah.
It just seems like very, very there. But any chance I get to bring up Mindon Eldalieva, I will, because when do you really get a chance to talk about that tower, considering how beautiful it was? I've talked about the Blackpool Tower more on this podcast than I've talked about the Mindon. Right, this is where we are going to get to a bit of if you really like Gondor as a kingdom and you really love the Gondorians and think they're the best thing since sliced bread, this next bit might not be for you because history kind of continues after that, right? So we've got the 1050 is when we leave it there. The next notable event is for around 400 years later in the 1400s of the Third Age. There's a king of Gondor called Valakar, sorry. And many Gondorians are rebelling against him as he gets old and is nearly dead. They were rebelling because his son, Eldakar, was not seen as a fit future king because he was born in a foreign country and his mother was not of the blood of the Dunedain, and they thought and they said she was of a lesser race, meaning that Eldakar might not be as long-lived. Now, I'll let that one speak for itself, that Gondor was annoyed that people weren't practicing eugenics and they were always getting high and mighty that someone had an impure bloodline. Interesting.
And also interesting that like their knowledge was that that person wouldn't be as strong, fit enough, live long enough. Their genes.
Wouldn't live long enough, wouldn't laugh long enough, wouldn't love
Oh,
hard enough.
sorry.
So yeah, it's bit of a dark day because this is a civil war now in Gondor called the Kin Strife. And this is where we get into the origins of the Corsairs. We know where Umbar and we know what's happening there, but these are the Corsairs now, I'll tell you. So Eldakar was deposed in the year 1437, and the people of Umbar and Pelagia and other coastal areas supported the man who did the deposing. They supported the deposer.
What does deposing mean?
Someone who deposed, kicked out,
I
overturned,
thought double
sacked.
check.
You depose a king. You depose a king. You take him from his office. And this deposer was a man who held the office of captain of the ships, and he was called Castamere. And he was near to the crown by blood, so he was heavily supported in the replacement for Eldakar. So 10 years later after this, Eldakar returned because he flees to Rovanien, to his mother's people, flees north, right? 10 years later, Eldakar returns with an army of northern Dunedain, i.e. Dunedain from Arnor, and other Northmen in 1447, and he kills Castamere in a great battle. But the sons of Castamere escape to Pelagia, and so Eldakar besieges this as well. But remember what I said about Umbar, because it applies to Pelagia. If it is a big harbour,
You've got to fight from both
you've got to get it locked
land
up.
and sea.
You've got to get it locked up like a Chinese finger trap. You've got to get both sides at once.
I like that analogy.
Because 1 year later, Eldakar can only fight from the land because he hasn't got any ships, he hasn't got anything like that. He had to flee. But 1 year later, the sons of Castamere gather their strength as best they could and they sail from Pelagia to Umbar. They just leave the fight. They then declare Umbar an independent lordship and a haven for all of the enemies of the King of Gondor.
Nice.
They put out a casting call. They say, if you hate these cunts,
Come
come
here.
here. There were maybe 500 years in total where Gondor held it, and now it starts to flip back and forth to being their enemies, right? So they had a good run, but now the Sons of Castamere have declared it's open season. If you hate Gondor, come and join it. That's where now we have the actual Corsairs of Umbar, because it's said that Umbar remained at Gondor, that war with Gondor, sorry, for many lives of men and became a threat to the coastlands of Gondor and all traffic of the sea. So the Corsair bit, going back to the beginning, they were an independent lordship. They are authorized by their lords to go out and attack everyone they see as enemies.
Yeah.
And everyone's an enemy, so do whatever they want. It was so turbulent at this time, around the 1400s of Gondor, that the entire region of South Gondor became a debated land. Like, as in
No
arguments,
one
no one knew
was
who
in
ruled.
control.
Yeah, because it depends who you asked at the time. It was a complete toss-up, right? Like, it could be like one day you get an order from like the King of Gondor to do this, and then the next day the Corsairs run through and they're just like, well, where's the Gondorians? They're not gonna fucking stop us. Yeah. A result of the loss of Umbar meant that they'd lost their gateway to Harad, so they lost control over Harad as well. The kings no longer acknowledged lordship. It was slipping, right? And then it also, as you'd expect, after a civil war, there's probably some bitter feelings, brother against brother, mother against son, that type of stuff. It becomes a popular holiday destination for close relatives of the King of Gondor who were conspiring against him,
Yeah,
or anybody committing treason. They would flee to Umbar and join the rebels.
nice.
So, yeah, it became an embassy of sort, bit of an Epstein Island slash, like Russia type of, where people have fled like the US
Yeah,
and went to Russia and stuff like that.
can't get extradited there.
Exactly. There's no extradition treaties with Umbar. Very good way to put it, Rebecca. So let's skip forward a bit. In the year 1540 of the Third Age, the king Aldemir was killed by Umbar during the Troubles. I don't know, I'm talking about it like it's Northern Ireland, but it's the Troubles. And he's the younger son of Eldakar. And the reason the younger son is the king is because during the kin strife, and again, we'll get to this during the history of Gondor, during the Civil War, Eldakar's older son had been killed by Castamir. So Castamir was trying to clean up. He didn't want any like threat to his power. And, unfortunately he lost, but he still killed one of Eldakar's sons. So, yeah, that's why the younger son. 11 years later, Aldemar's son, who was called Vinyarion, later called himself Hjarmendasil II, defeated the men of Harad and crushed Umbar. So now it flips back to Gondorian control.
I'm still on the side of the pirates.
Right, okay, interesting. So it flips back and forth. They're always at war, right?
Yeah,
But the Corsairs are a thing now,
yeah,
right?
it's official.
They are a thing. Because the next notable event occurs 100 or so years later when a king of Gondor is assassinated by Corsairs of Umbar. The great grandsons of Castamir, i.e., the guy who kicked off this whole civil war shit, they were now the lead. There was two of his great grandsons. They were now the leaders of the Corsairs of Umbar.
Ooh,
Yeah.
how the tables turn.
Their names were Angamayati and Sangayando. And they learned through their own spies in Gondor, that the king at the time, who was now called Minardil,
Who's probably a relative
yeah, by
of some
blood,
sort,
some
yeah.
distance, yeah, it's all interbred. But they learned that Minardil was in Pelagia, the harbour city, and he wasn't expecting any danger because his father, Vinyarion, his father was the one who'd crushed them like a few years prior. So he was like, oh, there's no threat from Umbar anymore. So the two leaders, they get their men together, they make a raid up the River Anduin, just like they do during the War of the Ring. They ravage Pelagia, they kill the king, and they also raid other places along the coast and escape with treasure. Great success, very nice, is all I can really think to say to that.
I need to pay.
So score one for the Umbar. And we keep going, because this is when the Corsairs are kicking off, right? They're being cheeky bastards. So years later, the Corsairs become even bolder, and they're raiding further and further north now, right? They're getting like uncomfortably close to stuff. They get as far as a place called Anfalas, which means Long Beach. And this resulted in Menadil's great grandnephew, i.e., the king who was killed, his great grandnephew, a king called Telumeta. And this is deep, right? This is so deep in Gondor's history that this is the year 1798 of the Third Age, and Telumeta is the 28th king of Gondor. So from the 12th and 13th king of Numenor, of which there's about 25, to then the 28th king of Gondor. So Umbar has been a pain in the ass of Gondor since, I think, like their 13th king. And Telumeta was offended by them coming so deep into his territory. And so 12 years into his reign, he took Umbar by storm and drove out the Corsairs completely. And it's during that raid that the last descendants of Castamere are killed. So, could this technically be considered the end of the kin strife? Even though it's been like hundreds of years, maybe.
Or maybe they've just disappeared somewhere too.
No, they're gone.
Oh,
It's confirmed. Who knows? But anyway, Telu Meta is the Quenya name for our constellation Orion, which means warrior of the sky.
nice.
And after the events of Umbar, he then takes the epithet Umbadasil, which means conqueror of Umbar. And there are then some versions of the history where Umbar is completely rebuilt after this. They're like, right, sick of looking at this shit. But in published versions, he just occupies it. They don't rebuild it. And the kings of Gondor then have relative peace for a while. It's evidence, and this is one of those indirect Tolkien things where there are other events that happen that point to the kings of Gondor not being concerned by something happening with Umbar. So, for example, like the kings of Gondor feel comfortable enough to send large forces of ships away from Gondor and like to the north and stuff. So, like, because they're not concerned about attacks
Yeah,
from the sea. And then they've also got other instances where they'll lead an army out onto the plains of Dagorlad, which would bring them within like range of Umbar. And again, so it's that level of contentment that kind of indicates a lack of threat from
yeah,
Umbar. So the history of Gondor continues for another 700 years, and during that time, the kings of Gondor stop being the kings, like they disappear. It's the stewards take over, and the next time we hear about Umbar is during the reign of the steward Kirion, and this is the guy who, during our Rohan series, he's the one who offered Eol the Young the Calinarvon for them to settle in. The Eotheod become the Rohirrim when they settle in the Calinarvon, and it's Kirion the Steward who makes that, and he does the oath of friendship with them. So it's that guy, and he is dealing with the Corsairs of Umbar as one of his enemies at the time. So I imagine for Kirion, Gondor's beset by enemies on all sides at that time. That's why he makes the offer
yeah.
to the Eotheod to come and settle and defend the land. So it's just a big pile of shit for that poor lad, I imagine. Later on, in the year 2740, almost 1,000 years after it's crushed for like Umbar crushed the previous time, the 15th Prince of Dol Amroth, who was unnamed in history, and Dol Amroth is an area of Gondor that's like its own principality, is killed by Corsairs. And it's weird because the 15th, 16th, and 17th princes of Dol Amroth, at least, are unnamed in history. It just says the 15th prince was killed, which is weird. But the Corsairs, during
Who
this
rear
time,
their heads again.
they have reared their head because they're building a great fleet during this time and are gearing up for big attacks, right? So they then launch 3 fleets and they go as far north as the River Isen after they set sail from Umbar in the year 2758. And this is where they appear in another story we've covered well, not recently, but another story we've covered. And the War of the Rohirrim, the film, right? And the story from the so he's going to shake in a minute. He's going to do his big ear flappy shake. I can see it. Every time we record with the dog in the room, at some point he'll do this big, horrible dobby shake of his head.
Just wait for it. I don't think he will.
I think he
I
will.
think he's gone off to do his ear shake.
Yeah. But there we go. There it is. So
He
they.
went off and he's come back
I
in
know.
the room. He's been polite. Good boy, Bomber.
So if you've seen the film The War of the Rohirrim, or you know the story and you've listened to our series on Rohan, the Corsairs of Umbar appear in that story because they are helping the Dunlendings. They join forces with that bastard wolf, son of Freka. And this, during the story where Helm Hammerhand dies at the Hornburg like an absolute badass, and where the steward becomes known as Helm's Deep. And it's also during this time, in the year 2759, that another of these 3 fleets is fighting with the steward Beren of Gondor. And it's only after the Gondorians defeat them that they're able to send the help into Rohan when the snows thaw. That allows the resolution of that story where Rohan is saved from extinction. So they're there in the background, right? They are there. And coming towards the end of their history, when Sauron rises again, Umbar just straight up, all right, well, hey, Dad, you're back. Like, oh, you said you were going to get cigarettes for 3,000 years. You're back. Like, oh my God. Um, and it's not even a question. It's just Umbar, yeah, straight back to Daddy Sauron. They also smashed down the massive white pillar that was a symbol of victory over
No.
Sauron. Yeah. And it's speculated even, that it is possible at this time in history that due to the change of ownership and occupation and moving populations and all that, that the servants of Sauron who hold Umbar during the War of the Ring may be the Haradrim. It's no longer any of like the Black Numenorians or anything like that. It just very might be possible that it's just the Haradrim as well now. And as we come towards the end of the Tale of Umbar, we've got our boy Aragorn, who is going under the name Thorongil, absolutely smashes the arse off the Corsairs in the year 2980 of the Third Age. So after the events of the Hobbit, is it after the events of the Hobbit? I think so. Um, he serves under Denethor's father,
Yeah.
Ecthelion II, who loves Aragorn like a son. He doesn't know who he is. He just thinks he's this cool guy that's come out of the north. This is when Aragorn's on his adventures, right?
Yeah.
And this plants a seed of jealousy in Denethor, Ecthelion's son, for this bastard from the north who's just come and took his father's affection. But Aragorn gets a small fleet of ships together under the name of Thorongil, attacks Umbar at night, burns a load of their ships, has a battle on the quayside with someone called the Captain of the Haven, which got to be a very senior post, and then retreats with very small losses. So that is kind of like guerrilla warfare at its finest. That's shock tactics, hit and run. So in a sense, this could be like Umbar's Vietnam. Is like Aragorn coming up the fucking coming down the sea playing Fortunate Son. And the last we ever hear about the Corsairs of Umbar is the War of the Ring, where it's said that the main fleet of Umbar was 50 great ships and many smaller vessels beyond count. They sail to Pelagia, and there they meet the army of the dead, who've caused them to flee in absolute terror. And we also know that the Corsairs use slaves because the only people left on the ships are chained Gondorians who were taken during raids and they're then like set free. Aragorn captured as many of the ships as he could, but some of them were either burning or had started to float away in their panic of them trying to like get back out to sea or to reach the other shore. So, pretty, again, twice in a century, well, twice in 100 years, the guy hits them like really hard, really fast, and they have no idea what the fuck's going on. Go Aragorn. That's pretty effective.
Yeah.
Aragorn mans the ships that he steals, along with all the troops he can gather, and he sets sail for Minas Tirith and the Battle of the Pelennor Fields. And then, after the War of the Ring, Aragorn makes peace with the people of Harad, and it's possible that Umbar was included in this, but there is reference to other wars and battles fought alongside Eomer as king of the Rohirrim, because it says that until the end of his life, Eomer would ride to war with Aragorn to subdue many enemies in the south.
I mean, Aragorn's like, he's thirsty, isn't
Yeah,
he?
he just fucking hates.
Everything.
He just hates
Well,
anything that's south of Gondor. So there's a good chance that whatever happened during Aragorn's reign, that Umbar was pacified in one way or another, and it probably just became like, we need to make peace with these people or we're never going to survive. It might have been that the Umbar remains kind of independent, but they forget their beef because they'll never survive otherwise. So we'll see. So to answer the question that I posed at the beginning of this episode, which was, who were the Corsairs of Umbar? The answer to me is that it's pretty much a flip-flopping pain in the arse of Gondor.
yeah.
And
Whoever can be asked to battle for the
yeah,
area at
and
the time.
to me, Umbar to Gondor must be like trying to hold a cat that is constantly trying to bite and scratch you.
Mm.
It's like, what at one point, like, at what point do you think, "Fuck this, I've had enough"?
Yeah, equally for the Gondorian kings as well. Feel
Yeah.
like it's both sides, like, they both probably think of it the same.
Yeah, it was a really interesting as well
It's like
doing
a
the
pain in the arse area.
yeah, it was really interesting as that doing, the history of it because you see some of the things we'll get into in other episodes about, like, the history of Gondor because obviously it's massively tied up in it. But then when you have these big gaps of, like, 700 years, you think of everything that's happened. I can't don't quote me on this, but I think in that 700 year gap before the Stewart Kirian, I think it's the year 1980 or the year 2000 of the Third Age, somewhere around there, where King Earnil II, I think it's him, he gets taunted by the Witch King to go to Minas Ithil, and he just disappears, and that's the last king of Gondor. Like, that's so it's like, yeah, there's nothing to do with the Corsairs, but we know other things are happening there. Like, there's other things happening in Middle Earth. And there's also speculation as well. Well, not speculation, but that I think three of the Nazgul are Black Numenorians. So there's a chance that one or more of them could have been from Umbar at some point as well. But
Yeah.
it never really appears in the histories because it's not concrete. So it's not even really speculation. And it wouldn't make much of a difference. It's just might be. So yeah, there were pirates in Middle Earth. They were a pain in the ass, and the entire place is like it just lingered like a bad fart. Like it's but incredibly strategic place to hold, which is interesting to think that a coastal city is a gateway to holding the desert. Like
Yeah.
that's really interesting because it's because you go down from Gondor and then
Equally,
in.
because there's a lot of other coastal areas
Yes.
that I
Yep.
don't see
Well,
the
you've got
significance.
yeah, you've got the Bay of Belfast like just above it, and that's not seen as significant as Umbar. But Umbar was a key defensive position that, and hence why it was so hard fought over. But I don't understand military tactics enough to really to. But yeah, that was much better than the Tales of the Shire review, which was shit. I'm still annoyed about that game. It's
Yeah.
not great, not great. I got annoyed and went and I've started playing Minecraft because I was like, I just want a cozy game.
Well, I ended up playing
Oh, you've been playing Animal Crossing, yeah,
Animal
yeah,
Crossing,
yeah.
so in the time that you've been writing a book and doing your comedy and having a promotion, I've been trying to finally complete the museum collections.
Yeah, takes all snorts, doesn't it?
All
Aye, all
snorts.
snorts. Right. Well, I think that naturally kind of brings us to a close today. Not really got the next episode planned out, to be honest. So I'm not really sure what's going to be next. And even then, I should probably stop telling people anyway, because inevitably something ends up
Change your
changing.
mind.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
ends up changing. No idea. I think we'll probably be. I think I'll try and do something like a little bit fun, a bit of a one-offer, like something a bit more, like a bit light-hearted.
Like a
But
snug barrier vibe.
no, 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 no. I'll do some law, something
Oh,
law, but like I'll take a subject that should be easy to cover and then go from there. But again, I always say that as well, and it ends up being fucking 10-part series. So yeah, we'll see. Right, reminder: if you like horror books or you like a bit of smut, please go and buy my book, The Horror at Beamish Hall. It's out on Amazon and on Audible, which is also owned by Amazon, but whatever. If you are in the northeast of England or you live in a coastal city, I will be in Stockton-on-Tees on the 29th, no, 29th, Friday the 29th of August. I'll be doing a comedy show in Stockton at a place called Stickies, a gong show where there's a chance to win. I'll be up against 11 other comedians. And then on Sunday the 7th of September, I will be at Dr. Inks in Redcar doing a comedy show there, where it'll just be me. It'll just be me all night. So that's going to be fucking terrifying.
so I'm gonna go
Yeah. And
and
heckle me. Yeah.
just
Fucking heckle me. Yeah.
I'm gonna throw nuts at you. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get drunk and I'm gonna heckle you.
Oh, great. Yeah. It'll be, well, actually, to be fair, I got heckled the other night and it was more funny. It was like some people, I can only imagine when they're at home, like watching the telly, they think it's a conversation there as well. Instead of just watching, like they'll be fucking talking back to the soap opera, thinking everyone's an ignorant cunt for not acknowledging them. But no, wherever you are, hope you're having a fantastic day. And it's goodbye from me, Chris.
And goodbye from Becca.
Bye.